And hi, hello. It is me, Teacher Allie. I was just chatting with you. I know that we did a bunch of highs, but you could say hi to me again. I wouldn't mind. And I'm so excited to see you for the first day of Kaplan's free week of MCAT prep. This is the first time that we've ever done this, and I'm so excited to see you. I will be hosting. I like to say I'm hosting while doing the mosting, but I will be here all week long. I'll also be your coach all week long too. So later in today's lesson, I'll give you my email address and you can use my services totally for free for advice, to ask questions of, whatever you need all week long. So I'm super excited for that. And I saw that a lot of you are coming all week or will be here for most of the week whenever you can get here. And I'm super excited about that too. I'm going to get you right into your test pretty quickly, but we are going to go over a couple of things, including how this test will work. I know some of you had questions about that, and I want to make sure that we get into that first, and then we'll take our test. And so here's our agenda. This is a practice test event. So it's not just our practice test. We will take our practice MCAT, then we will have a score review so you can get kind of an idea of the scoring of the MCAT. Then we'll actually review some questions from this very test. So you will have a lesson from me, Teacher Allie, that goes back over some of the questions from this test. So usually I find that you guys are pretty interested in that because you're curious. Why did I get the score that I got and how can I do better? So we're going to have a test review as well. And then we're going to go into plus coaching. So I did tell you that I'm a coach with Kaplan and that you would be getting my coaching services via email free all week long. So I will definitely make sure that you know more about what that is. And we will have a plus coaching session every day this week on a different topic. So on today's lesson, we'll talk a little bit about how to use the tools of the test in order to get more points, but we'll have a totally different lesson every single week having to do with prepping and how to study and how to get the most amount of time or the most amount of points in the amount of time that you have. All of those kind of things that go into setting up your schedule and being a good test prepper, because preparing for this test is going to be very different than preparing for the test that you've had in undergrad. And let me know if you've been studying for a while and you've already figured that out. So that your friends can also know that it is a little bit different the way that you need to prep, and being able to set up that schedule and tweak it as you get more strengths and different weaknesses and things are changing and your score is changing. That's a constant process of having to tweak what you're doing, what you're studying, what your timeline is. And so every day this week, we'll have plus coaching, including today, so that you can start learning some of those things to set up your study schedule correctly. And then we'll end with Q&A. I do kind of teach a little long, so we'll see how many questions I can get in there. But remember, you have me free as your plus coach via email all week long. And so you can always ask me questions there. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Now, this is the difference between today's test and the real test, because you guys probably already saw that today's test is different, right? Much shorter. So this is the difference. What we've done is we've cut down the amount of questions, we've cut down the time that you have for each. However, we've still represented the range of topics that you'll be tested on, the range of difficulty that you'll be tested on. And so your score is still very indicative of what you would get on test day. We put a lot of time in that and we're very proud of it. So even though it is shorter, it's still going to be very accurate in terms of prediction for what would happen on test day. And that's it. Like I said, I'm going to get you into the test really quick. I can't wait to see you afterwards for our score review, our test review, and our first plus coaching session. This is what you got to do. You got to open your account, kaptest.com/login. Make sure that you're logged in there, and you will be able to find your MCAT practice test. And once you do, it's going to ask you for a password. So once I see that most of us, sorry about that, that most of us have found our way to our passcode, go ahead. Oh, you can't do it here. I forgot. Go ahead and tell me in the chat whether or not you found your key code request. Just go ahead and give me a yes. And once I see that most of us have found our way and are being prompted for the key code, then I will release it. Just want to make sure that we kind of all start on the same place, so that we can finish on the same place. Yay, you're all ready. And I'm so excited for you. And remember, just like your friends were saying in chat earlier, don't be nervous. This is just a first step or one of many steps along the way in order to see where you're at and what you need to work on. Your key code is practice smarter. That's all one word and lowercase. Again, practice smarter. We'll leave this up on the screen. I can't wait to see you later, and good luck. Hi, hello, and welcome back. I hope that you're feeling ready to continue with today's lesson. Let me know that you are done with the test, that you can hear me, and that you're ready to get started. We're going to do a brief score review, and then we're going to jump into reviewing some of these questions to make sure that you see the way that we would attack, because sometimes it's more than what you would expect. It's more and different than what you would expect. Here we go with our score review. Now, you should have gotten your scores automatically. And again, even though it's a shorter test, it's been designed especially to ensure that you get a score that is very predictive of what you would get on a full length test. And it is our only mini test. So all of the other tests that we provide to students and that we have in our courses are, of course, full length tests. Now here we have our scoring. So it's the same scoring scale for each of your sections, and you will get a score for each section, as well as a combined score that is your out of 528 that people are looking at whenever they see what a school is looking for. So go ahead and tell me if you know. Do you know the average admit score? Do you know what you should be shooting for, at least for average admit? I knew some of you would know. So the range is actually 509 to 511. So if you're thinking 510, then you are right on track. And great job, Alan, with that. I saw that you were the first one to let us know that it is, in fact, a 510, right in between the 509 to 511. And then depending on what school you want to go to, that number is going to change, right? Because some schools are looking for this and lower and higher and all of that. But your average score is going to be, again, 509 to 511. And the scores are really very tightly clustered in terms of percentage and percentile. So just a couple points above puts you in a very different percentile. Just a couple points below puts you also in a very different percentile. I'm not ready for that yet. I do want to talk about today's class. So in today's class, you're welcome to ask any questions of us, but we don't have a way in this format, which is different from our classroom format in order to fit all of the students that we have today. In this format, we don't have a way to see which questions should be private and which ones should go to the whole class. And I know not everybody likes to ask their questions or say, hey, I'm confused in front of everybody. And so what we've done is we've assigned you a private tutor. So you can ask any questions and a tutor will respond to you. And these tutors are great. They are longtime MCAT teachers. One of them is even a current medical student at Yale Medical. And so you can really trust that what they're going to tell you is great. But here on camera, I won't know what your questions are, but I will ask you questions all of the time. And I hope that you will participate because this is a participatory class. And that's how I'm going to tell whether you understand what I'm teaching you is by the answers to the questions that I ask. But if you do have questions, feel free to ask them. I won't be able to see them because they would all scroll by too fast, but they'll go direct to your private tutor and you'll get an answer right away. But now it's time to start with our test review. Are y'all ready? This is how it's going to go. I'm going to give you 1 minute to review the question. I know that you've seen it before, but you had a lot of questions today. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to review, maybe answer it again if you want to, and just see what your process is, because our whole lesson today is going to be about comparing the Kaplan process to your process so that you can see maybe if you want to employ some of our methods in order to reach right answers more efficiently next time. So here we go with our first question. Again, I'm going to give you 1 minute, so you have 1 minute to review this question, and then we'll discuss. So how many of y'all jumped straight into math with this question? I'm willing to guess, or that most of us did, right? That we went straight to math for this question. We all should know that KEQ formula, right? Products over reactants, but we don't necessarily need to jump straight into math, and we shouldn't always jump straight into math. So this test has one thing that we should all be a little bit concerned with, and that's the timing of the test. Even though it's a particularly long test, it's got a lot of questions and it's very difficult. And so we don't want to get tied up with questions that will take us a long time or are particularly difficult. And so with this question, once I see that I'm going to have to do math, I know that there's going to be more steps than just a few. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this question and move on. I'm going to come back later. And in fact, in our Plus coaching session later today, we're going to talk about using those mark and review features in order to increase your score by moving through the section freely and answering the questions in the order that you want. So I would not actually answer this question immediately because, again, there's going to be a lot of math, but I would pick an answer before moving on and mark it so that I can come back and do my math later. I just don't want to do it first because it takes a little longer. I want to get to those quicker and easier questions first. But I want to show you something. When it comes to marking answers, I want you to think very critically because this test is something different, right? This test is trying to see, can you take the ideas that you know and can you apply them in whatever given situation? And with this particular question, they use something that they use fairly often throughout the test, and that is patterns in the right answers. In fact, they're looking for you all through the test. They're looking for you to utilize the patterns that they leave you, to utilize the shortcuts that they leave you, and to utilize even the wrong answer pathologies, as we call it, all throughout the test. So they use the same type of wrong answers over and over. They use the same kind of patterns commonly throughout the test. And so let me show you this, or let me ask you this first. I'm not going to show you. I'm going to ask you. Let me ask you, what do you see in terms of patterns with these answer choices? Because I'm going to move on. That's what I'm going to do as a test taker. I'm going to come back later to do my math. But before I move on, I'm going to want to guess something. And I think that this one's pretty easy to guess by using patterns. Tell me, what do you see happening several times? What patterns do you see? So we should definitely see the mantissa 1.5 coming up 3 different times. So that's something that I'm going to think about. They obviously are pretty impressed with that mantissa. And there you go also. So you also have your exponent pattern as well. So we have 2 exponents that are the same. And so I'm going to go for the overlaps when I guess and move on. And we have 3 1.5 mantissas. We have 2 -5 exponents. And so the answer choice that has the most overlap is B. And B is, in fact, the correct answer. And when I would come back to this and I would do my math, I would find and confirm that B is the right answer. And they utilize these all over the test. But I know, you want to do the math, you want to just be so sure. So after we picked the answer choice that had the most overlapping patterns, we're going to mark it. We're going to come back later, do that math, and just confirm what we're already suspecting. And so let's do it. Let's confirm it. Again, we already said we know KEQ's got your products over reactants. And then you just kind of have to plug it in, right? Because they gave us that KEQ. So we're just going to kind of move it around. And so your math probably looks a little something like this. And then like this. And then ultimately like this. And I'm going to stop right here for just a second because I did see in our poll originally that a lot of us were tempted by C. So tell me, y'all, those of you who did not answer C, what are the people who did answer C missing? What did they forget to do? What is that error? Because this is an error that they're going to expect you to make on this test. And so you have to be really looking out for it. And you want to tell yourself, of course, that you have to convert. So a lot of times wrong answers on the MCAT are going to be just pretty simple conversion errors. So if you know that you're falling for these a lot of times, then make sure that you constantly remind yourself that you're going to have to, one, know your conversions, and two, employ them all across the test, right? And the answer then is B. But I want you to really think about the strategy of marking answers coming back later so that you can save time. And this can be on questions that are particularly difficult or questions that just look more time consuming. And again, we're going to talk about this in Plus coaching, but when you do that, also look at the answer choices. See if there are any patterns you can utilize so that you can at least have an answer down. And also, I would say too that whenever an answer choice sticks out like a sore thumb, like C, it doesn't look like the others. I mean, it does have that negative exponent, but it's a 3 as Amanda said. The others are 1.5. And we should kind of know that we'd have a conversion in this problem. And so I would think that the 1.5s would be very tempting, and that 3 just sticking out like a sore thumb is going to tell me, no, I don't want to answer that. Are you guys ready to try the next one? The next one is a cards question, and it has a kind of different type of pattern, and this is what we call, again, wrong answer pathologies. And the MCAT utilizes the same type of tired wrong answers all of the time. And this next question is a great illustrator of that. So I'm going to give you, again, 1 minute, just review the question, reacquaint yourself with what you answered. And I'm going to put up a poll again, and you don't have to answer the exact same thing that you answered on the test. If you see it differently now, feel free to answer differently. But I do want to see what you think about this one. Go ahead, take 1 minute, and good luck. Now, y'all, I'm going to ask y'all some questions again, but this time I hope that you will participate more. This is a participatory class. It's going to get kind of awkward because I will wait for you. Like, I'll just sit here and wait for you. So don't leave me hanging. I got to know what you're thinking. I want to know if we're on the same wavelength. So this question, we can really look at wrong answer pathologies because they're kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I do see that a lot of us got this right, but about 40% of us did not get this right. And so we got to explain it to our friends. And one of the things that we can look at is this common wrong answer type. And I'm going to ask you a question first. Tell me this. You're all scientists, right? So as a scientist, or of the scientists that you know and have read before, how often or how likely is a scientist to use really strong language? Always. Never. It'll never happen. It's always going to be like this. This is the best discovery ever. You'll never top this discovery. How often or how likely do you think it is that these scientists would talk that way? Would you like to talk that way? Is that what you're going to put into your hopeful to be publicated writings, that things are always, never, that really strong language? Because you know what? This is a test for scientists. And on this test, we're not going to do that either. And so answer choices that are that strong are like no-goes, right? So tell me this. What do you see? Just throw out some words that you see in some of these answer choices that sound very strong. Because again, the MCAT, just like scientists, is not going to speak in these absolutes are very strong all the time. What do you see? Because 3 of these answer choices do the same thing. We call it being extreme. We have 3 extreme answer choices, very common in terms of wrong answer pathologies on the MCAT, especially in cars. Always, right? Completely rejected. As a scientist, I'm never going to say that. I completely reject that. Completely reject that. What else? What else? It was marred. I think that one was kind of the harder one to see, but was it really marred? I mean, marred is a pretty strong word. And then we have also the first significant. Would you call any science discovery the first significant discovery? I mean, that's very strong. We said this one is the first significant one. Nothing was significant that came before that. So all three of those are wrong. So just knowing those wrong answer pathologies would make me really, really investigate A. I'm not going to be investigating the others too closely, but I am going to look at A and I'm going to say, well, you know, the others look very extreme. So let me just see if it did further develop the realistic impulse of the Harlem tradition. And in fact, when I go searching for my answer, which I'm not telling you to answer just by patterns, I'm saying use the patterns in order to tell yourself what you should investigate and what's worthy of your investigation. And then you'll find once you investigate A that that is the right answer, and it's held right there in the last sentence. So great work on that. And now we're going to move into potentially everybody's favorite section. I don't know, biochem. How do you like it? I will say that biochem has always been a little scary for me, but that's okay because you only get tested on certain topics and you're going to learn them as you prep. So we're going into biochem. What do you think Teacher Allie, who has said that you need to look at these answer choices and you got to check for patterns. What do you think I'm going to tell you to do first when you look at this next question? What is it that I'm interested in teaching you today? Because I think that you've probably seen a pattern. Yeah, I did that. Listen, I'm very punny. I'm a teacher. I got to use teacher jokes. Yeah, I want you to look for patterns, especially in this next question. Look first. See how the patterns can help you in answering the questions. I'm going to give you 1 minute again to attempt the next question or to review it, to think about your answer. I'm going to put up, let me put up a new poll so I can see what y'all are thinking. Here you go. 1 minute on the clock and good luck. And y'all know by now that I'm a big fan of utilizing the patterns in order to cut down the time. And there's a lot of patterns in this one, so we need to talk about that first. Tell me, what are the patterns that you're seeing? What are you seeing in terms of the patterns of this particular question? What is jumping out to you? Because we actually have two patterns. We actually have two patterns that we're looking at. What do you see? Well, you should definitely be seeing transcription versus translation. Great job, Lisa. And what else? Yes, there you go. Increase and decrease. So those are our two patterns. We're looking at transcription versus translation, and we are looking at increase and decrease. But let me ask y'all this, because two of these really aren't in play. Let me ask y'all this. Transcription and RNA. What does transcription do in terms of RNA and DNA? What is transcription's job there? What is happening? What is going on? Transcription is going to make RNA from DNA. But let me ask y'all this. Let me ask y'all this. Are we talking about making RNA right now? Is that what we're doing? We're making it? We are not making it. We're dealing with the stability of it. And so we can ignore the two answers that talk about transcription. We can ignore those entirely. Right? And so now we're left with the last two pieces here. And we already know it's translation. So we're dealing with this increase and decrease, right? And this is where the MCAT is really so tricky. They always want to trick you. They're hoping that if they say tumor and tumor growth and tumor cells, that you're going to forget that this is actually a pretty simple science question and one that you know the answer to. They think that you're going to be like, okay, well, I think I know this. But how does it apply to tumors and how does it apply to tumor cells and tumor growth? And I'm getting so confused. But let me ask you this, because I think you know the answer to this question. It's much simpler. Let me ask you this. If my RNA is more stable, are we going to be doing more or less translation to make proteins? More or less? Because I think you know that. I think that if you had that question in your science class and if they had just put it that way, you would have been able to answer this really quickly. More, right? More. And so increase is what we're looking for. And the answer is C. Don't you wish they just asked you the right way? And the MCAT is doing this all over the test, and that's why you can't just study science. You have to get used to this test because this test is not just about memorizing facts and knowing your science. What do they have? What do they have in their back pocket that proves that you know science? What are you going to put in your application that's like, yeah, I know science and I'm pretty good at it? What do they have? Of course, they have your transcript. You have your prerequisites. You can't apply until you have them. And they have your GPA too. They already know about you in science. Now they want to see how you can apply it. They want to see if you can make those patterns and those connections that doctors make. I like to say that the difference between those people who do well on the MCAT and those people who aren't quite ready yet, is the difference between WebMD and being a doctor. Tell me this. Tell me this. If I put my symptoms, last week I was sick. Last week I was sick with a cold. If I put my symptoms into WebMD, my cold symptoms, what are they going to tell me is going to happen to me? Have y'all been to this website? You know this website, WebMD, right? They got all the science in the world. But what are they going to tell me when I say that I have a cold? When I put in my symptoms for the cold, they're going to say I have cancer or I'm going to die. This is always the joke with the WebMD. And that's because WebMD has all the science in the world, but they cannot put it together. They can't see those patterns. They can't close this out and see how does it connect. And that's what the test is really testing you on. They know that you know science. And medical schools know that you know science. Right? And so I want you to remember this. And in fact, I'm going to put up a poll because I want you to tell me this for sure. Are you WebMD? Because I don't think so. I think that you're doctors. I think you can utilize these patterns. I think that if you were in a room, trauma room, and all of a sudden you have all these voices in your head and you're trying to figure out what's wrong, I think you could shut those out. I think you could shut them out. And I think you can do that because you are here to be doctors and not to be WebMD. And that's what they are looking for. So we're going to try another one now. What do you think I'm going to tell you to look for in those answer choices prior to picking your answer? And we don't pick answers based on patterns, but we look so we can know which questions to zone in on, which ones should we be taking seriously. And that's what I'm going to give you right now. Here you go. 1 minute on the clock. Reevaluate this. Yes, patterns. Reevaluate. And here you go. 1 minute on the clock. Good luck. All right, here we are with Psych Soc and a very pattern-based question. And so we should be thinking about these patterns. But before I get into the patterns, I do want to draw your attention to one little thing in the questions, or in the question itself, the question stimulus. I'm gonna write in pink. So whenever you see pink, that's just me. That's just me. So here we have this word. They love to use this word on the MCAT. And if you're going really fast, if you're rushing yourself and you're not paying attention, you might miss this. And that is the word respectively, right? So they're going to tell you Broca's area and Wernicke's area, and then they're going to put what they do way later and then say respectively, because they want to see, are you going to get confused about what does what? So whenever you see that word respectively, I just want you to slow down, because they are expecting that a percentage of MCATers are not going to get it right because of this word respectively. So tell me this. What does Broca's area do according to the question stimulus? Remember the word respectively. It means in that order. What does Broca's area help us to do? Respectively, it helps us to produce speech. But they think that a certain percentage of y'all are going to rush. And since you see Wernicke's area right next to producing speech, that you're going to grab that. But no, because of respectively, and because Teacher Allie told you, you're going to slow down just a little bit and be very sure that you know what does what. So Broca's area helps us to produce speech, and Wernicke's area helps us to comprehend. All right. And that is also, shock and surprise, our first pattern. Look at that. We got two that say corpus callosum, and we got two that say Wernicke's area. But tell me this, and I just gave you a preview there. Is your patient presenting with an issue comprehending? Is it a comprehension issue that your patient has? It's not. And since Wernicke's area, we've been told, is about the comprehension of spoken language, then we can get rid of those two right away. And we know that it has something to do with corpus callosum. We know it has something to do with corpus callosum because we only have two answers left, and they both say damaged corpus callosum. So we need to be thinking really about where you see things, how you use your brain, where things are located, and how the corpus callosum comes in. So we're going to talk about that. Now, the next pattern you should have noticed is left and right visual field. Our left and right visual field. And so you should be looking at not only corpus callosum, but also your left and right visual field. And I'm gonna illustrate this for you. Now remember, we're trying to figure out if a corpus callosum, a damaged corpus callosum, is going to make it hard for someone to speak or impossible for someone to speak when their corpus callosum is damaged. So that's how we have to frame this question. And so the science that you need to know here is some basic understanding of where things are located in your brain and where you process the things that you see. So here you're seeing a picture on the left side. You're seeing a painting on your left side, right? Where is that going to be processed? When you see on the left, what side of your brain is it going to be processed on? Where are we going to process it? I think you know this. When we break it down to simple science questions, I think you know it. Yeah, we're going to process it, of course, on the right side. And on the right side, we're going to then have to do what? Our Broca's area is over there. So we got to send it. We got to send it over to the left side. What are we thinking now? Oh my gosh, I saw something on the left. I processed it on the right. And now, in order to get it to my Broca's area, which helps me to produce speech, I got to move it over. But let me ask you all this. Another simple-ish science question, as long as you know your place in the brain. What is it that you need to be working in order to move it from the right side to the left? Your corpus callosum. So if your corpus callosum is damaged and you're seeing something on the left and you're processing it on the right, guess what? You can't get it over there to Broca's area. And you're going to have a hard time saying the words that you're looking for. Okay, and here we are on the right side. If you see something on the right side, where are you going to process it? Where do you process the stuff that you see on the right side? On the left side, right? On the left side. And that happens to be the exact same side where your Broca's area is. So since you are seeing it on your right, processing it on your left, your Broca's area is also in the left. Since both are on the left, do you need anything to move it over there? Or are you good to go? You're good to go, right? You're already on the same side. You're already on the same side. And so when you see something on the left and it's processed on the right, you're going to need to move it over. When you see something on the right and it's processed on the left, and that's where Broca's area is, you don't have to move it over. You can see it and you can think it, and then you can also say it, because we're going to send it right up to Broca's area. It's on the same side. It's on the exact same side. So now you can say what it is that you're thinking. So tell me, where is the problem? Is the problem seeing something on the left with a damaged corpus callosum? Or if you saw something on the right and had a damaged callosum, would that be okay? Because now it's time to pick the right answer. Let me see what y'all are answering. Let me look at this poll. Oh, I didn't put up a poll. Here you go. Answer me now. What do you think? What do you think? Oh, you guys are doing great. You guys are doing great. Well, you guys are doing great. We got 90% for A, which is in fact the right answer. When you see something on the left, you're processing it on the right. And guess what? Your Broca's area isn't on the right. It's on the left. And so you need to be able to send it over. And if you had a damaged corpus callosum, you can't do that. And I'm going to show you again. I'm going to show you again, because it's grown now. It's about 12% of us. We're still saying B. So I want to show you again. When you see something on the left, you're going to say, in your mind, you're going to think. You're not going to say. You're going to think, it's a Renoir, right? That's the type of painting. But you got to get it over to your Broca's area, which is on the other side, which requires that it travel through your corpus callosum. But guess what? We've been told that our patient can't say it. He cannot produce the words that he's thinking. And we've been told that he's got a damaged corpus callosum. So if you can't move it over to Broca's area, you can't say it, right? And so seeing it on the left side with a damaged corpus callosum is going to make it to where your patient cannot say the words that they are thinking. All right, I'm going to give you another 1 minute for this next psych-soc question, but I do want to point out the key things to look for, and I'm going to show you the sample size, because I know that's kind of a hard one. So I'm going to give you 1 minute, and good luck. And so I give you a little extra help with this one. I highlighted the key areas, and that's because I wanted to put up the number of participants in the study. Tell me this, who had trouble finding that on the test? And you're like looking for it, and you're running out of time, and you're getting all panicky about it. Did that happen? That always happens to someone. It always happens to someone. So I want to point that out real quick, because that's another trick they try and play on you. So sometimes they will just give you the number and numbers. They're going to put 500 for 500, and you're going to find it really quickly when you're looking. But look what I've highlighted. This is a little trick they like to play. So if you're scanning, and you can't find the number, go back and look for it in words, because sometimes they put it in the words 500 because they think that when you're scanning, and you're worried about time and you're freaking out, that you won't see it. All right, so there were 500 participants. That's important to know in order to answer this. It tells us that experiment 1 yields anomalous results whenever somebody has schizophrenia, right? And then they say the laboratory determined that these irregular results. So there were irregular results. So tell me, what answer choice can we just get rid of, given that the sample size started with 500 and we had to get rid of anomalous results? What can we cross right off our list to begin with? What are we going to get rid of? 500, right? If you started with 500 and you had to remove the anomalies, then 500 can't be the right answer. It can't be the right answer. Now, the rest of this is playing on some common mistakes. And I did see that about 14% of us are falling into, I think it's kind of the same common mistake for the two additional wrong answers. So I want to ask you this. Are we looking for the number of schizophrenic anomalous results that were removed, or are we looking for the current size after we have removed? Right? So is it how many removed or after we removed total? What are we actually looking for? Go back and read. We're looking for the non-anomalous sample size. And so we're not looking for how many we took out. We're not looking for that number. We're looking for what are we left with after we take some out, right? And so that leads me to my next question, right? Are there a lot of schizophrenics or not a lot of people with schizophrenia, right? Is that a big, big number of the population, or is it a little number of the population? So once you break it down to kind of this simple science question, it's like, that's a simple science question. We do not have a lot of people with schizophrenia out there. And so those numbers that are very low are playing on the fact that you might get confused and think that it's asking you how many you took out, and that you would then pick them, right? So we need to get rid of the answer choices that are too small, and that's definitely going to be 8. Definitely going to be 8. And then if you look at 98, it's definitely a lot bigger of a number than 8. And in terms of the 500, but listen, it's still less than 1. So that would be less than 1 out of every 5 is left, right? Is left after you've taken out. So you would be saying that 4 or more than 4 of every people in 5 had schizophrenia, and that's not right. And so we're left with 496, which would be the number of their 500 sample size once they remove the anomalies, which were the schizophrenics. And we know that they're going to remove a small amount of people because there's just not a lot of people with schizophrenia out there. So we should look for 500 minus not a lot, which gives us 496. So good job on that one. And I saw that a lot of us had it right, but we need to make sure that we don't fall for these traps. So go back. Once you pick your answer choice, just go back and give a little check to what the question was. Because if you're like, oh, I'm thinking about schizophrenics and I'm going really fast and there's not a lot of people with schizophrenia, and oh, 8, that's a really small number, and you're going to grab it, right? But if you had that final step of, you know what, I think it's 8 because schizophrenics and not a lot of schizophrenics, I'm going to answer A, then that's fine. But just go back and confirm what the question was. Because if you took that extra second to just go back, you would say, oh, the non-anomalous sample size, a non-anomalous sample size. So that's whoever's left after I take out my anomalies. And then you would be able to find the right answer and avoid that trap, because they did expect you to fall into the trap that is A and B. And they also expected a good percentage of you to not be able to find the sample size. And so don't discount that they will put traps right into the passages that they're providing to you. And one of those traps, as you now know, is this right here, is not putting a number, because they expect you to be scanning and then worrying about time. And they don't put a number, they put it in words. So if you're scanning and can't find it in numbers, start looking for words and you are more likely to find it. Listen, I am not going to overwhelm you today. Most of us are here for the whole free week or a lot of the free week. And also we are going to pin the link for enrolling in the other sessions of the free week, because if you didn't know this was a free week, guess what? It's a free week and I want you to sign up. So let's make sure that we pin that link to the top, and you'll see that link appearing any minute so that you can sign up for any ones that you haven't. But before that, coaching. So a Kaplan Plus coach is a person who works with you. We actually work with our students privately to personalize everything that we do, but I can't work with each and every one of you privately throughout the free week because there's a lot. But what what I can do is coach you on various topics that I have found that a lot of my students are interested in. And the first one that I've chosen is really relevant to what you've done today. And it is about how to move around the test. So y'all noticed, I'm sure, that there are a lot of different features on the test. Or you may not have noticed. Tell me if you noticed a lot of features or if you didn't. Sometimes people are like, I didn't even realize that was there. I didn't even realize it was there, but there are a lot of features. The first that I'm going to point out is the timer. What was different about this timer? Was anybody shocked a little bit by the timer? Was anybody like, oh, that's not what I was expecting? Because you need to know, because this timer is maybe a little different than the way that we usually time ourselves doing something. What is this timer doing? What is it doing? It's scary, right? It's scary because it's ticking down. It's ticking down. And when we're practicing at home, we should also be timing ourselves ticking down, because a lot of students will take their first practice test or be taking a practice test and they'll be a little bit, were any of you shocked by that? Did that like make you feel any kind of anxiety? It did for me. I was like, whoa, why is it counting down? And all of a sudden I'm like, where am I at? I'm not used to this. How long am I taking? Is it the right amount of time? Oh, I feel nervous, and I'm having to do all this math changing in my head to figure out how long I've been working on a question, and I don't want to do any of that. So you need to practice with a timer that also counts down. But I do want to talk about the actual features of the test and how often you should use them, because you don't, yeah, the anxiety is real. You don't want to use them as much. You don't use them all as much. So I put them in the order of like how often you should use them. The first is section review. You should use this a lot. And I put the little number 1 there. So where you see the number 1, that's where your section review button is. This should be the thing that you use the most. This is going to be how you find your way back to stuff. It's going to be how you see any unanswered questions. It's going to be where you see questions that were marked. So I will mark a question if I've answered it and I want to go back anyway. That's like a little note to myself. It's very hard to remember this across an 8-hour test, like what you want to go back to or what you're sure of, so you're not going to waste any time going back. And this is what your review field looks like. So it'll show you things that were marked, things that are incomplete, and things that are completed. So notice that question 2 is both marked and completed. So when I'm taking a test, if I answer it, but I'm like, you know what, if I have extra time, I would like to come back and look at it. Or like that math question, like, oh, I'm pretty sure it's this because I see all these overlapping patterns and I don't really feel like doing this math. It's going to take me a long time. I would answer it with the question of with all the overlapping patterns. And then I would also mark it so that I know this is a question that I do want to go back to later. And that's like my little hint for myself. Do you guys think that you could remember that? Like you could remember each and every question that you wanted to go back to and how bad you wanted to go back to it and how you should prioritize it in your timeline of how much time you have to answer these questions? No way. No way are you going to remember that. This test is really long. I mean, it was long today, but it's extra long on the real test. And, also you want to move around in your section. And you want to use these tools. And I will tell you, learning science is studying this stuff all the time. And they have actually studied grad and professional school tests. And they find that the people who use these functions, the mark and review tools, the most consistently score higher than those people who do not. And so make this a part of what you're doing. It makes it so that you can take the questions in the right order for you, which you want to do. You want to get to the questions you know. You want to get to the discrete questions. You want to get to the easiest questions, the shortest questions, so that you're banking time for what comes later. But you can't do that without marking it for yourself, right? And that's why I want this section review to be the number 1 thing. The number 1 thing. The number 2 thing is answer elimination. So did you guys see this one? Sometimes I feel like students don't see this one, that they're like, oh, I didn't even know you could do that. Is that you? Because that's definitely a thing, and you should definitely use it. So you saw when I was looking at the answer choices in my presentation today, I'm crossing answer choices off. I'm doing that fairly regularly, and you want to too, because what if you're able to eliminate 2, but you're not exactly sure what the right answer is, and maybe you pick one of the 2 because you've spent more time than you wanted to, and then you mark it because, yeah, I would like to come back because I kind of guessed on that one, like I was only able to eliminate 2. And you want to come back to it. How are you going to remember which answer choices you don't like if you didn't cross them off? You would have to remember that, right? Do you guys feel like you have enough time to remember all of the things that you're going to have to remember on this test? Because I don't think so. I don't think if you mark this question to come back with, you're going to be able to remember which answer choices you eliminate. I think you're going to have to go right back through it, right? And you're going to have to think through it, and you're going to waste time. And I don't want you to waste time. So that's the number 2 thing that I need you to be using on this test. These are very important. Number 3 is your periodic table. Some of you might have been thinking that the periodic table would be way up at the top. It's not, but it's not to be forgotten either. And I do find students a lot of times are like, I have the periodic table memorized. Is that you? Is that you? Are you willing to say it loud and proud that you have the periodic table memorized? I always have students who have it memorized. Maybe all of you in here have it memorized. I still want you to use it on the test because the anxiety is real, as we said earlier. The time is clicking down. You're moving all the way around this test. You're trying to remember a bunch of stuff. It is a very difficult test. You're worried about your future. A lot of different things are going on in your head. So you may have the periodic table memorized, but even if you have it memorized, you need to go here and you need to check it. And a lot of us don't have it memorized, so definitely use it. But don't make it the number 1 or number 2 thing that you're using, because a lot of times the question gives you what you need and you don't actually need to go to it. But so just check first. Check if your answers and your question give you what you need, or if you actually need to go there. And then if you actually need to go there, then make use of it, because it's very helpful even if you haven't memorized, because you need to be sure that with all the other voices in your head and the worries and the stress and the difficult questions, and you're trying to think really hard, that you don't make a careless error. And it's there in order to ensure that you don't. So the next thing that you need to do is your question marking. So you shouldn't be marking a lot of questions. You should either be leaving them blank, as in, I don't know, I'm totally skipping this. And that will be the first things that you come back to after you hit those easy questions. And those should be marked complete, like I'm for sure that I know this. Question marking is for saying, hey, I kind of don't think that I know this for sure. And if I had more time to think about it, I would definitely go back. Maybe you've narrowed it down to 2 and put a guess or whatever, and because you knew you spent way too much time. And you're basically saying, I would come back to this question if I could, but it is answered. But you don't want to do that all over the place, because if you do that all over, then it's essentially useless to you, because you're not going to have that much time to review your work, and you may not have any time right now. If you're early in your prep, you may not have any time to review your work. But when you start to have the time, because you're moving through this section efficiently, because you understand how to get rid of answers by their wrong answer pathologies, and you're doing these efficiency tactics, then you'll start to have time left over, but you're never going to have time to go over the whole thing. So that's why question marking is very low on the list. It is a cool trick. It's a very cool trick. But if you mark everything, it's like you mark nothing. And that's the same with the highlighting feature. Did y'all see this highlighting feature? I love to highlight, but listen, you got to highlight judiciously. Have you ever, in a class or in a book or in your life, started highlighting and you ended up like highlighting everything? I used to do this, especially when I first started college and I had my first couple of classes that I thought were hard. I was like marking everything because I'm like, this is so super important. I'm sure I'm going to be tested on this. And then I would look back later and it would be like almost everything was highlighted. Don't leave me hanging. I cannot be the only person that this just happened to. I can't be the only one. I don't believe it, right? So I highlighted pretty much everything at a certain point in my life. And it's the same here, because when I did that, or when y'all did it, because I know you did. Y'all might leave me hanging, but I know you did that. I know you used your highlighter too much, at least once or twice. But anyway, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for not leaving me hanging on that one. But the reason that you did that is because that class seemed particularly hard for you, and all the information seems so important to you. But guess what? On the MCAT, it's going to be the same way, because you know the MCAT is very hard, because you're worried about the MCAT and how that's going to affect your future. And so you're in all of the same situation where you have to really be judicious, because your instinct is going to be everything is important. I have to mark everything. And then you may end up highlighting every single thing. And again, if you highlight everything, if you mark everything, then it's just the same as not having highlighted anything, not having marked anything. So that's why those two come way down on the list. It is a cool trick, but not to be overused. So this is the end of my coaching session today. I hope that you will employ these tricks on your next test. But now before I get to Q&A, I want to ask y'all a question. Can you tell me something that you learned today that you can start employing next time on the MCAT? Can you just give me that? Because as a teacher, I like to know. I like to know that you've learned at least a little bit of something. I see in my poll that you guys are not WebMDs, so I'm excited about that. But tell me, what have you learned? Patterns, always looking for patterns. Absolutely. Your patterns are going to be the way that you can figure out what is worth investigating and what is probably not right. And especially those overlapping patterns. Yeah, that's right. What else? What else? There are definitely patterns. This is a logic test. Yes, it's going to be a big factor, especially in efficiency, right? Because it helps you to narrow down on an answer that you want to check, and that's really going to help you. And elimination is huge. Sometimes people, actually often, people really do not put the emphasis on elimination that they should, because sometimes you can get to the right answer just by eliminating the wrong answer. So make that a big part of what you're going to do. Yes, slowing down. I love that. Using your features more, because learning science, and I'm telling you, they've done studies on actual entrance exams, and they've seen that the people who use these the most are most likely or score higher than those people who do not. And what they said too is, have you guys ever heard this where you've heard, oh, you're more likely, you should go with your first instinct because you're more likely to change from something that's right to something that's wrong? That's actually not true. And when they did these studies on actual entrance exams, what they found is that more often people were changing their answers when they went back and they used the market review. They were changing their answers from wrong to right. So I want you to do that. You need to build that into your study. And yes, use all those tools. Not all math questions. We're not going to skip all math questions, but definitely the ones that are going to take a long time. And this happens any question that you feel like is extra hard or is going to take an extra long time. It's better to skip those and come back later. That way, the questions that are easy for you and those discrete questions, you just knock them out, save a little bit of time, and so you have more time later. Because sometimes we get stubborn. I used to do this a lot when I first started prepping. I would get very stubborn on a question. And I would be like, I know I can answer this. I know it. So I'm just going to keep working on it. And it becomes like a speed bump, because I might end up spending 5 minutes when really I only should have spent 1. And then later I've run out of time. I don't want that to happen. So any question that I know I'm likely to get a little stubborn with, I'm going to put to the end. That way, if I give myself a little speed bump, it's at the end. I'd much rather do that. And if you're going to get a wrong answer too, it's a lot better to get a wrong answer quickly than taking too long. So I'd rather it be at the end. I don't have as much time, and I'm less likely to spend too much time, because you know what? I'd rather get a wrong answer in 1 minute than spend 5 minutes getting that same wrong answer. But that is what I have for you today. I want you to make sure that your email is in my poll, because I am going to send out a recap email, but I can only do it if your email is in my poll. Let me make sure that it's still open. I'm going to make it be the only one that's open right now. Make sure that y'all can see it. Make sure that your email is in there, because you're going to get a recap email, and you're also going to get homework. How many of you are coming to the lesson tomorrow? Tomorrow is our Chem Phys. We're having Chem Phys sample class tomorrow. Is anybody coming to that? Are you enrolled? Because this quiz that I'm going to send out, this is a quiz designed to kind of look at your knowledge and kind of reactivate it, right? So that you can remember some things that you should know. It's not a super long one, but I do want you to do it. And we will have homework for every lesson this week. And it will be something to kind of reactivate the things that you should know for the next day's class. Because as you've seen today, the MCAT isn't just about science. It's about patterns. It's about science. It's about making those connections. It's about pulling out of a big old passage just the things you need. Just like if you were sitting in a trauma room and everyone's talking and you don't know you can pull out. It's like, I'm shutting out all those noises. I'm focusing on my patient, and I got this, right? Same thing here. So all of y'all, and yes, if you haven't enrolled yet, enroll. The link is up top. This is your homework. I'll be sending it out afterwards. And now, I told you I always go a little bit long. I only got a few minutes for questions, but remember, I'm going to email you. I'm your free coach from Kaplan for the whole week. So I'll be answering any questions that you have about your timeline, about Kaplan, about prepping, about even science questions. If you want to send over some of your MCAT questions, feel free. The only thing it is that it has to be either a Kaplan question or a question from the AAMC, because we cannot trust the validity of other questions from other places. But if you need help and explanations and further explanations on any Kaplan question or any official question from the test maker, then I'll be happy to help you with those too. But now it is time for questions and answers. What have you got? I know you got some kind of question. I know you got something you're wondering about this free week, about the MCAT, about prepping. How long do you have access to your score report? You're going to have access to your score report for 2 weeks. And that'll include also the charts and the graphs and the strengths and areas of opportunity. And I really want you to pay close attention to those, because students that don't have coaching and don't go to classes, like students who are prepping alone, consistently I've found that they don't do enough with the review of their test. You should not just be looking at the answers that you miss and then, you know, be like, oh, I'll do better next time. You should be tracking kind of why you're missing answers so that you know kind of what the traps are that you're consistently falling into. Is it a science issue, or do I fall for extreme language? Because extreme language can make something that sounds exactly right and just tip it right over that edge. I'm going to see what those patterns are. You also want to identify strengths and weaknesses. A lot of times students only identify weaknesses and they want to just study all their weaknesses. But guess what? Guess what? A strength on one test is not necessarily a strength on another test, because you may have gotten all of a specific type of question on kind of an easier level. And so it's like, oh, you got almost all these right. And you're like, oh, that's a strength. I don't need to study that. And then the next practice test you take, they've made all that certain type of question much, much harder. And you haven't been studying it because you identified it as a strength, right? So that's not necessarily true. So you need to look at your strengths and seek out advanced material on that. Seek out practice problems. Ensure that it is a strength, and if it is, then study it in an advanced way. You don't want to read a basic lesson about something that you're super strong at. You need to be working in advanced material so you can get those questions that no one else can get. Similarly, with your weaknesses, you don't want to just practice weaknesses. You've got to get instruction. You've got to read about it, and you don't want to read at an advanced level because you're not ready for it. So you're just going to be spinning your wheels. So make sure that you really review. You're looking for patterns. You're marking not only your weaknesses, but also your strengths. Preparing to study strengths and weaknesses because they're not necessarily truly strengths or weaknesses, and because you should study strengths and weaknesses differently. Yeah, again, does the real MCAT have the paragraph summaries under the articles the way this test did? So yeah, this test is exactly like the real MCAT in every single way, except that we give you all the answers and explanations afterwards in the charts and graphs, which the real test will not do. But yeah, this one is exactly the same, except for that, of course, that it's shorter. And as I was saying when we started the test, all of Kaplan's tests inside or that you can procure from Kaplan are all full-length tests. But this is our mini test for getting started. Lacey, you're taking the exam in January. How often should I take full-length practice exam? Lacey, there will come a time in your prep where my answer is going to be 1 a week. And because you're prepping in January and it's currently November, that time is coming up. But guess what? Guess what? One of my coaching sessions this week will be on building your MCAT calendar, how to fit in all the things that you're doing and when you should do stuff and what that should look like. Because guess what? That's what coaches help their students do. We help them make their calendars. We help them fit MCAT prep into the rest of their life. We make sure that they're studying the right things at the right levels at the right time for them. So absolutely, you should at a certain point, not too long from now, be taking 1 a week. But it's not here yet. And come to the rest of the lessons this week so that you can hit up that coaching session on making your own MCAT calendar. Alan, is it visually the same? Is the MCAT visually the same as today's practice test? Yes, in every single way. The colors are slightly different because we don't want to violate copyright, but everything is located in the same way. Everything works the same way from where your periodic table is to what it looks like. Everything else is exactly the same. And so you can get used to those features and the way that things will work with the Kaplan practice test. And because it's, you know, essentially it's just like the real one. You're so welcome, Alex. What are the statistics point-wise on an increasing score from the diagnostic test after using the Kaplan course? Well, you know, Catherine, we don't actually follow that because everyone starts at a different place. Everyone utilizes the resources more or less. And there's just like, there's a whole different path for every single person. I will tell you that I used the Kaplan course myself. And I ended up going to school on full scholarship. And that was very important to me. It's the reason that I still teach here to this day, because I want to help y'all to be as successful as possible the way that Kaplan helped me to be successful. I can tell you also I've never had a student whose score did not increase, but the amount that they increase is different across all students. Students who work a lot, practice a lot, ask me a lot of questions, come to my Skype office hours, they're emailing me outside of class as well. Those students consistently score higher and have higher jumps than other students. Students who don't practice as much or don't ask me a lot of questions don't end up having as much. And I think that's just because my whole job is to get y'all to the finish line. And that's what I'm working on all the time. And if you're not asking questions and utilizing that, then you're still just kind of wandering through. So I mean, the answer is one, that we don't track that because it would be so skewed by all of the different factors that play into it. But I will tell you again, I've never had a student whose score didn't increase, and I have had students that made amazing increases, percentile wise and score wise, that I don't think they would have been able to make without Kaplan. And I'm a true believer because I'm not only a teacher, I'm a client. Next question. Derek, does the online Kaplan prep course contain live instruction like we were doing now? It absolutely does. It absolutely does, but it's in a little bit of a different format. So our classrooms are much smaller because I know that you guys don't want huge classes. So we try and keep it to a much smaller amount of students. And so we actually work in a different format to where you're able to interact with the teacher more. This one is got so many students on it because it's the free week at MCAT. So many people signed up, much more than we would ever put into class. So we're in kind of a different format, but you're always going to have a live teacher. You will always have a private tutor assigned to you in private. You'll also have public chat, which is a lot easier for me. This is kind of semi-public because your questions are going to a tutor, but inside of my actual classroom, I would be able to see your questions if you wanted to ask me directly, or you could always jump into private and work with your private tutor there. So we include that as well. So it is very similar to this, but it's not exactly the same. You're going to have a lot more interaction with your teachers if you're in the actual Kaplan course. Marie, how many times should I take the actual MCAT? Marie, that's a very interesting question. And our last session this week is our boot camp session. And I'm going to bring a lot of data from the AAMC so that we can kind of talk about that. But the answer is you should try and get it done in one. 73% of the people who are accepted into medical school are first-time test takers. So you have to work really hard at that first time because you want to be in that 73%. But if you already have taken it, it doesn't mean that you can't get in on a multiple attempt. But that percentage, of course, was 27% of students. So if you are attempting the test again for another time, an additional time, you have to really work hard. So, I mean, the answer is be as prepared as possible. Do not think and do not place all of your bets on being the student who can do it alone and you're just going to prep alone. That is a unicorn of a student. I will tell you, it's a unicorn. Like, I just couldn't even imagine doing it on my own, and I would never risk it either because it really is such a big deal and a big moment in your life. And the acceptance rates are low and it's tough. It's really tough. And the MCAT is your number one biggest factor. So you should aim to do it once. A lot of students will say, oh, well, if I don't get it once, I'll just do it the second time. Well, guess what? As I told you, multiple test takers, only 20%, 27% of those who are accepted. I wouldn't want to be aiming to now be part of the 27%. I want to be aiming to make it as a 73%. They are going to be able to see all of the scores of all of your tests. And so unless you make a very significant difference between the tests, it's not going to make a big difference in whether you get accepted. And getting a big significant difference is going to mean you have to get a course. It's going to mean that you have to prep very differently than you did before, that you get instruction, that you don't do it alone, because when you did it alone, you didn't get the score you want. So significantly changing it is going to mean significantly changing your prep. Well, if that's the option, then you might as well do it the first time. Do as much prep, get as much as you can in help, in guidance. And I know that you guys know that because you're already here in my classroom and you're going to be here for the whole free week of MCAT from Kaplan. All right, y'all, I've gone over time. Go ahead and email me any questions that I haven't gotten to. I'm so sorry. And I will be able to answer those. I'm going to have my email put up on the top. Can we go ahead and put that email with the other links? And I'm going to type it in as well. It's consultateacher@kaplan.com. I know it doesn't sound direct to me, but it is. It goes direct to me. The reason it doesn't sound direct is because I am the consulting teacher for live online special events from Kaplan. And basically all that means is that I'm the free to the public teacher. That I teach to the most people all the time. But I'm going to be answering all your questions. I am happy to coach you and advise you. You can tell me about your situation, how the test went today, any questions that you have, any questions that you reviewed and you still don't get it and you would like another explanation, feel free to send it this week. And I'll be happy to help you. And I look forward to seeing you at the next lesson. And, I just want to thank you for coming today. I always like to end on the same note. Thank you so much for being here. I know how scary this process is. I know how scary it is, the test, and feeling like whether you're going to get in or not and worrying about it. Maybe you've seen people who didn't make it. I know I certainly had. And that's scary. And so trusting someone to instruct you or tell you about it is scary. And I remember making that trust fall right into Kaplan's arms. And I was very worried about it. So I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here today. I want to tell you that I am truly humbled by your decision to trust us to be a part of this hugely important part of your life. And I want you to know that we take that really seriously. And we're very excited to have you for this whole week and to help you as much as we can. And, honestly, I just think that like I said, I'm just humbled that you would choose us. I can't wait to continue helping you for the week. And that's it. That's all I've got. I've gone over. Can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.